My golden sister stole my husband and returned a year later, begging forgiveness. I left them with nothing. My name is Ashley. I'm 27, and let's get real. If anyone had told me that my golden sister would turn into a living nightmare, I'd have just laughed. Seriously, Lily? My 25-year-old sister, whom I trusted like myself? It sounds like something out of a bad TV drama. Growing up, Lily and I were close in a way that felt unbreakable. We shared everything, our secrets, our clothes, even our stupid teenage crushes. We were practically inseparable, and I never thought twice about her loyalty. Sure, we had our differences, but we were still two parts of the same whole. When we were young, we had our little disagreements, but nothing that ever stuck. Lily was always the one who attracted attention. She was the wild one, the girl who wore the sparkliest dress at every school dance and turned heads without even trying. I was fine with it, honestly. My life was quieter, and I loved it that way. I became the homebody, found myself a cozy little life with my husband, Zach, where I thought I'd stay forever. Meanwhile, Lily was out there, lighting up every room she walked into, her golden curls bouncing as she laughed her loud, infectious laugh. She was magnetic, with her doll-like blue eyes that seemed to draw people in like a force of nature. People loved her, and I got it. She was Lily. But then, things started to shift, in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on at first. Life seemed perfect on the surface. Zach and I had our routines, our little inside jokes. We weren't the life of the party, but we were happy. Until I began to notice that something was off. Zach started coming home later than usual, glancing at his phone a bit too often, as though it held some kind of secret he couldn't let me in on. That was new. He used to leave his phone lying around like it was just another object in our home. Now it was practically attached to his hand. I told myself it was probably just stress, work or something he'd get over in time. But it nagged at me, this feeling that something was slipping away between us. I asked him once if everything was okay. His response was fast, like he was trying to prove he had nothing to hide. Of course, Ashley. What are you talking about? He even gave me that smile, the same one that had once convinced me he was the most honest man in the world. But now it felt hollow, like he was wearing a mask. Maybe it was just exhaustion, right? Or so I kept telling myself, ignoring the feeling that our easygoing life was starting to crack around the edges. Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts. Zach started coming home even later, his urgent business suddenly a regular excuse. I'd hear him mumbling something about unexpected meetings, pressing deadlines, a surprise client that just couldn't wait. But there was no real explanation, just the same vague story told over and over. And then came the credit card charges. Now, I'm not someone who regularly checks every little thing on our statements, but when I saw a charge for $300 at some random bar, I couldn't just brush it off. I remember staring at it thinking, is he out with coworkers? Or just indulging in some overpriced bar food? I wanted to believe it was harmless, but something in my gut told me it was more than that. Of course, I made up excuses. My brain immediately jumped to conclusions like, oh, he's stressed. Or maybe he was going through a midlife crisis, though he was a bit young for that. People go through these phases, right? But a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that normal couples don't act like this. They talk, they share. It's not just one person disappearing without a word while the other plays detective. Then came the night that changed everything. He'd left his phone on the kitchen counter, something he never used to do lately. I'd barely registered the thought when this deep, nagging urge crept up. You know the feeling? It's the one everyone says you should ignore. But I couldn't. It felt like my instincts were screaming, pick it up, look. Yeah, I know, it's crossing a line, unethical, and all that. But there I was, picking up the phone before I'd even decided what I was doing. I thought maybe I'd just check a message or two, something quick that might settle this ugly feeling gnawing at me. And then I saw it. Lily's name, scattered through every other message. Her name. My sister's name. Party at Lily's. Hanging with Lily. Can't wait to see you again, Lily. I could feel my heart drop to the floor, like some cruel joke had just been played on me. There was a solid block of ice where my chest used to be. Here I was, staring at my husband's texts, and everything felt like it was crumbling, one word at a time. Lily? The sister who'd shared my entire life, who I'd trusted beyond words? And here, she was the subject of all his secret little messages. Before I could even process, Zach walked in. His face went pale as he noticed me holding his phone. There was that split-second widening of his eyes, the kind you get when you know you're busted but still hope it's just a bad dream. He tried to keep his cool, forcing a smile as if nothing was wrong, but I could see it, clear as day. He knew he'd been caught. And in that moment, something clicked in me. My mind went calm, eerily focused. Without a word, I turned, grabbed a suitcase, and started packing his things. I moved like I was on autopilot, each fold of his clothes feeling like another piece of closure. Zach tried to stammer something, his voice panicked, like a kid who'd gotten caught with his hand in the cookie jar. But I didn't care. I had one clear, unmistakable plan. I walked to the door, suitcase in hand, pointed to the exit, and, in the calmest voice I could muster, said, "The door's there, Zach. Don't forget to shut it on your way out." He looked at me, stunned, his lips moving as if he was searching for words, but none came out. And that was it. One chapter closed, and as for what comes next, well, I'll take it one day at a time. The next day, with emotions still raw and my mind spinning like I'd just walked out of an emotional war zone, I decided I had to talk to Lily. I didn't want to confront her, necessarily. Maybe some small part of me hoped she'd have an explanation, a real one, something that would make sense of the mess she'd left behind. Maybe she'd even apologize, realize the damage she'd done. I was clinging to that hope, thin as it was. So, I drove to her place, parked, and marched up to her door. I knocked, then waited. Silence. Not a single sound inside. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Growing frustrated, I pulled out my phone and called her, letting it ring until it went to voicemail. The anger simmered as I stood there, left in the empty silence of her absence. I jabbed at the doorbell, half thinking it might break from the force, but there was no response. She was ignoring me, avoiding me. And for what? To save herself from the truth she'd created? The situation only got uglier when our parents caught wind of it. They were clueless about what had really happened, still convinced that their golden daughter was somehow the saint she'd always pretended to be. They started in on me, giving their well-intentioned but misplaced speeches about family unity. "Ashley, please don't make a scene," they'd say, almost as if they were accusing me of causing drama for its own sake. And then there was the real gut punch. Sisters should stick together. This is just a misunderstanding. I wanted to scream. Support? Did sisterly support mean standing by while she walked all over my life? The weeks that followed felt like living in some twisted alternate reality. I came to terms with the fact that Lily wasn't going to magically show up at my door to fix things. No, she'd gone dark, avoiding any confrontation, leaving me to deal with the fallout alone. It was like she'd erased me from her life. And honestly, maybe that was her plan. Then, out of the blue, I got a text from her. Seeing her name light up my phone screen after weeks of silence sent a strange chill through me. I opened it, half expecting an apology or at least some explanation, but instead, I found this cold, detached message. "Hey, Ash, just wanted to let you know, Zach and I left together." That was it. A single line, no regret, no emotion. Like she was casually updating me on her new haircut or a last-minute vacation plan, not informing me that she'd run off with my husband. I sat there, rereading her message, the words blurring as they sank in. It wasn't even about losing Zach at that point. Honestly, he wasn't worth the heartache. But my sister, the person who had been my confidant, my partner in crime, had so easily chosen a life that didn't include me. She'd just cut me out, as if I'd never been there. The weight of that betrayal sat like a rock in my chest, suffocating any remaining attachment I might have had. Something inside me hardened. Some last piece of innocence that still believed in family, loyalty, the idea that we'd always have each other's backs. And right then, I knew. If she could turn her back on me so easily, then I had to turn mine. There was no going back. The year that followed? Oh, it was a trial by fire. Imagine, I lost not only a husband, who turned out to be a walking disaster, but also a sister I'd trusted with everything. Everything I'd once considered stable, my cozy home, my small but happy life, shattered, leaving me totally lost. It was like I had to learn to breathe again. But one thing was clear. If I'd built my happiness around others before, now I was going to build it around myself. I started by getting myself together. It was like a reset, like someone had hit restart on my life. I realized I needed to focus on something entirely dependent on me, something fulfilling and successful, to prove, first to myself, that I could do it. Work became my savior. I took on a new job, clueless about what I was getting into. But that was exactly what I needed, to have no time to think about betrayal. I threw myself into work, constantly learning new things, building my career from scratch. And you know what? It wasn't so bad. On the contrary, the more I achieved, the more I felt myself rebuilding, step by step. And then, as I found my footing, real friends appeared in my life. True ones, you know? Not golden sisters, but people who supported me in ways I hadn't even known were possible. We laughed together, sometimes to the point of tears, about how life can kick you in the back at the worst times, and it helped pull me out of that pit. They were there when I thought I couldn't hold on. It was something like a rebirth club, where each of us was our own little project rebuilding ourselves. 1 year passed, and honestly, I thought that whole drama was behind me. I finally had a normal life, a new job, real friends, and even a sense that I had moved on from everything. But as they say, surprises are always just around the corner. So there I was, standing by my door, and I heard the doorbell. I opened it, and who do you think I saw on my doorstep? Zach and Lily, in all their so-called glory. Well, glory might be putting it generously, more like they were mere shadows of themselves. Seriously, they looked like they'd just finished a quest titled, How to Be as Pathetic as Possible. Their clothes were wrinkled, and both of them looked as if they'd spent the night in some abandoned shed. And Lily, that was really something. Her face was pale as if she'd just binged an entire horror season, and her eyes, where there used to be an arrogant gleam, there was now only fear and confusion. My brain wanted to cue some dramatic soundtrack, but honestly, I was holding back laughter instead. Of course, the scene started with them saying, "We're sorry." Zach, my ex-husband and wannabe big shot, began complaining about how everything had gone downhill for him. He lost his job, his career was ruined, no friends, no money. Lily, my former golden sister, wasn't doing much better. Not only was she friendless, but apparently she'd also lost the aura of popularity she had been so proud of. Turns out it's not so fun being the queen when your entourage abandons you. And there they stood, hoping to evoke my sympathy, talking about their personal apocalypse. They honestly thought I'd drop everything, embrace them, and say something like, "Of course, darlings, come back home. I'll take care of everything." Yeah, right. I could have just shut the door in their faces and forgotten their pathetic expressions. But you know, something in me wanted more. Maybe it was my dark side that craved a bit of revenge. A simple get lost wouldn't have been enough. I stood there like a master of fate, and with the most generous expression I could muster, I offered them a place to stay, but on my terms. Zach, once proud and cocky, now looked like he'd gladly scrub floors just for a roof over his head. Oh, how I enjoyed seeing him like that, as if he'd been crushed by the weight of his own betrayal. Lily? Her once sparkling eyes now looked at me with hope. The poor thing probably thought she'd get a chance to start over, and that I, her merciful sister, would welcome her back into my life. They agreed to my terms without hesitation. What terms, you ask? Oh, here's where the fun begins. I gave them jobs, the worst, lowest-paying ones I could find. I made them work like slaves. Cleaning, hauling, scrubbing, any dirty job became theirs. Their once proud postures deflated with each working day. And it wasn't just satisfying. It was my own small, sweet taste of revenge. I watched every move they made, saw how each day their pride, that same pride that had led them to betray me, was crushed under the weight of labor and humiliation. The cocky gleam was gone from Zach's eyes. He dragged himself to the end of each shift, wiping the sweat from his face. And Lily, my star, looked like her bright light had dimmed, leaving only an empty shell. When I saw that Zach and Lily were fully settled into their new, wonderful life under my control, I knew it was time for the final blow. No sympathy, no soft endings. Just pure, calculated payback so they'd feel the full extent of the consequences. And I had the perfect plan. With my new friends and connections, I spread rumors that quickly spread through their social circles like wildfire. People whispered that Lily had betrayed her own sister for money. Others murmured that Zach wasn't worthy of a shred of trust. They became something of a cautionary tale in town, a reminder of how not to behave if you wanted to keep any respect or chance at a social life. At first, they probably thought these were just rumors. Sure, rumors pass. But when it started to sink in that the people who once admired them now avoided them like the plague, that was something. Friends who had adored fun and carefree Lily just the day before vanished from her life. Zach, once considered one of the guys, was now the one nobody invited, even to the dullest get-togethers. Their reputations were ruined, completely. So much so that even those who once saw them as idols rejected them. When I saw them beginning to realize that they couldn't escape me, that no one was going to reach out to help them, I could have felt a shred of pity, but no, I didn't feel sorry for them. Their family had turned its back, friends stopped answering their calls. Everyone who'd once stood by them was gone. Lily and Zach found themselves in a social vacuum they couldn't escape. And then they understood. They were completely dependent on me. When the time came for the final act, I decided to leave all the theatrics out. No shouting, no biting remarks, no dramatic speeches. Just calm, measured action. I gathered their pitiful belongings, as if they were not objects but remnants of their past lives, and carefully set them by the door. Every item reminded me of the pain they'd left in my life, and that made the process almost therapeutic. They stood before me, pathetic and lost, probably hoping for a last-minute, we changed our minds. But I just looked at them like they were nothing more than trash, and without a word, opened the door. My final look said more than any phrase could. You're not needed here anymore. Zach and Lily walked out quietly and wordlessly, clearly understanding they had no more cards to play. Once they crossed the threshold, I shut the door with the most satisfied smile I could muster. As soon as I closed the door behind them, I felt an incredible sense of relief, as if a huge weight had finally been lifted off my shoulders. Sure, maybe it was cruel to throw them out with nothing, but what could I do? Sympathy? Sorry, that's not my thing. They left me with nothing, and I simply returned the favor.